Well, hello there. You weren't expecting this, were you? You thought we were dead. And to be honest with you, sometimes I wish I was, but I'm not. I'm still here. I don't even know if you can hear this over the intro, to be honest with you. The tinkly tinkly tea music as written and performed by Mr. Danny Davis. And I'm rusty at this, I think. But one thing I've always been very good at is talking, so I'm probably just going to talk a lot. And that'll smooth things over, won't it? How the devil are you? Well, here I am. My name is Chris Clayton. I am one half of the duo that comprise and comport and make up this glorious thing that we know as the Strange and Deadly Show. This is a podcast that I think is about the Section 3 list related to the DPP, blah, 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 whatever it bloody is. I don't know. I haven't got anything written down. You know the drill. It's the list that's video nasties, isn't it? Or whatever it was. I got to be honest with you, folks. I'm hurtling towards 40. This podcast is still going on. There's barely anyone listening. But I'm here. I'm trying. I'm trying. And it's nearly Christmas as well. I'm trying to get into the Christmas spirit. I'm here in the cabin. I was here last year. And I'm here with an old friend of mine, a man that I've known now for, going on 13, 14, maybe even 15 years, somewhere around there. We've known each other a long, long time. And I think I said it before on this show, that is a long time to know somebody like me. Especially for somebody who is, like him, a kind of compassionate man, a smooth talker, the kind of guy who can host the Twilight Zone podcast, which is where you know him best. I know him as a fragrant and soft-fleshed, wonderful man. He smells like a sort of just a nice guy, really. You know, you come up to some people, you're like, oh, that's a nice guy, isn't it? And then you come close, not too close, because people have boundaries, but you come close, you think, yeah, that smells like a nice guy. Well, that nice guy, his name is Tom Elliott, and here he is.
Chris, thank you. Thank you for commenting on my smell. I appreciate that.
I haven't got anything else to say, Tom, I'll be honest with you.
Well, apparently now the Strange and Deadly Show is a Christmas show. It comes out every Christmas like clockwork and nothing in between, which we hope to change. I know we've said it before. We've said it many times. You know, we've had more comebacks than the Rolling Stones, and I've used that line before as well. But I think, you know, what are we doing here, Chris? Why have we even bothered to come back for Christmas? Don't say you don't know.
Who cares? Who cares? That's what the audience are going to be saying, aren't they? They're going to be like, yeah, you say this every year. Yeah, you're going to come back and you're going to do it again. And then you just turn up once a year now and go, oh, blee, 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 blue. Merry Christmas. Goodbye. We'll see you again next week. And then you don't turn up for another year. That's what they're saying, Tom.
They are.
But look, here's the deal. Life has its own way of taking the control of things away from you a little bit, and we've been busy doing our own things. Tom, believe it or not, I don't know if you know this, perhaps this is the only thing involving us that you ever listen to, but Tom and I actually do continue to do shows together on Tom's Patreon, the Twilight Zone. I'm not involved in that, but I review episodes of Night Gallery with you, Tom.
Mm-hmm.
On that in the little club you've got there, so I do that with you, and so we still record together, and we always talk about bringing this show back, and it's an active podcast. It's just not a very active podcast, I think is the best way of saying it. We just looked at our list, Tom, and we noticed that we only have 2 episodes left in terms of 4 films basically to cover before we're at the end of this list, and that's an extraordinary thing, I think, even though it's taken us so much longer than we thought it would do. We were almost at the end here.
Did we start in 2006?
Oh, probably. Yeah,
I think probably. It was something like that, wasn't it? I think so.
It was a very, very long time ago. Yeah. So long, in fact, that
Mary Whitehouse was still alive.
She was. Yeah, I still had hair back then, Tom. Now I'm a old bald coot. It's not good, but this is what age brings us, Now I'm a sort of fat, jelly, bald piece of shit really, when you get right down to it. Tom, you look, I'm going to be honest with you, you look practically the same as you did all those years ago. You know, life has treated you very well, dear boy.
Well, it's, hard work, good diet, and, maybe some good genetics along the way. But see, the thing is, we've said this before here on the Strange and Deadly show. It was always designed, wasn't it? That's why we didn't call it the Section 3 show or something like that, or the Video Nasties show. It was the Strange and Deadly show because we wanted to get into like culty things, things that we're passionate about. So we'd do the list and then we'd move on to something else. Not necessarily completely horror related, more in the realms of, it would be highly unlikely that we would like review the Halloween movies or something. That's because there's a million podcasts out there that do that. We just wanted to do something a bit different and kind of scratch that itch of doing some of the cultier things that we're into. Like, I like Godzilla movies, so we wouldn't do all of them because there's a ton of them, but we might do like, a couple of episodes on those, and you're into your Hong Kong cinema, your martial arts movies and, Asian cinema in general. So, this list has been tough. I think we probably would have got it done a lot quicker. Everything else aside, we might have got it done a lot quicker if some of them weren't such a struggle to get through. And I think you and I, we don't particularly enjoy just coming on a podcast just to slag stuff off, do we?
No.
We would prefer to talk about something we're passionate about. I think it's been an interesting exercise, but I am kind of looking forward to that list being over. And maybe, this is never going to be a regular show, but I think it's something that we always hope to do and just sort of, jump into when we want to.
The idea is in the future that this will become a more active podcast. Now, this isn't going to be a thing that you're going to get every week. That's never going to be the case. But certainly we're very eager to get this list finished so that we can, as Tom said, move on to things that may be a bit more culty. And that's not to say that we won't touch upon horror again in the future. But, certainly I think you and I, Tom, over the last, I want to say over the last couple of years, at a minimum, we've really delved back into a lot of the more culty things that we kind of grew up liking. And, I know for me personally that I've been enjoying buying a lot of the physical martial arts releases that are coming out from studios like Eureka and 88 Films. Arrow's just about to put out, at time of recording, they're just about to put out the Shaw Scope Volume 1 box set, which is this amazing looking box set of martial arts movies, classic Shaw Brothers movies. And so I've really kind of, when I buy a physical movie these days, because I tend to kind of opt for the digital route these days, when I buy a physical movie it tends to be one of them, just because it's a bit of an anomaly really that I live in a world where those things are being made, because of course when I was a kid those kinds of movies were, you could only really watch them on VHS. Poor print, badly dubbed, or the dubs kind of have an entertainment value in themselves, but badly dubbed, and now they're given the most wonderful treatments and accurate subtitles and things like that, and you get to hear them in their original language. And so that's kind of been where my head is at. And I know, looking at you, certainly you've really delved back into your love of kind of some of the kaiju movies and things like that, haven't you? And Columbo.
Yeah, very similar things, obviously.
Kaiju movies and Peter Falk.
Yeah, I think I've just, I've got to a point where all of this stuff has been on the sidelines really for years because I've been so, into that stuff. But I'm really passionate about it, and it's just been nice to kind of check that stuff out again. And that's the hope that, I would love to be schooled by you a bit on some of the movies that you're into and get into that, because who better to kind of show me it? I think, didn't we announce once that we were going to do Creep Show next? And I'm not sure that's actually going to happen now.
Possibly.
We'll talk about it.
We'll see. I mean, certainly the original idea, gosh, it must be about 2 years ago maybe that we came up with that. We were like, well, look, once we finish the Strange and Deadly show, which we're definitely going to finish really soon, we can talk about the Creepshow movies, and then we can move on to the TV show, which was about to air its first season at that point.
Yeah, it's been about 3 seasons now.
It's been about three seasons of the Christmas special, and we haven't said shit about it. So it's possible. I mean, I would still like to maybe do it one day, but I think Strange and Deadly will evolve to become something different in the future, and that's fine with me, because there's so many horror podcasts. I mean, there's dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of them. There were dozens of them when I started. None that were quite like the one I was doing at the time back in the old Gore Boy days, but ever since then it's just become more and more and more saturated. And I've got to be honest with you, and this is just my personal feeling, I don't really want to sit and listen to people talking about Dawn of the Dead again and going, let's go through the Friday the 13th series or whatever. It has no real interest for me personally, so I'd like to kind of dig into stuff that's a bit more culty, and a similar kind of format to what you were doing on the Gentleman's Grindhouse back in the day, where you kind of introduce somebody to a couple of different things. But I mean, I've seen some of the Godzilla movies, so it wouldn't necessarily always be a case that one person has seen this thing and the other person hasn't, but just to move into the realms of kind of cult film and examine some of that stuff, I think is quite exciting. In order to get there, of course, we need to finish this list, and we're so close to doing that. But unfortunately, we haven't got a double bill for you this time around, and we will get to that. We were going to cover The Demons, which is a Jess Franco movie, and Mark of the Devil, and we will get to them next time. But we thought, look, it's Christmas. Look, whether you even have heard this before Christmas or not, who knows? Chances are you're extremely busy as a person. You haven't got time to listen to two old shits talking about this stuff, but we'll give it a go, eh? We'll give it a go. And we're sitting here in the cabin like we were last year, Tom. We're warm, we're cozy, we've got our aperitifs, cocktail sausages, cheese balls, of course. My personal, what do you like as a real life tipple, Tom? If you're sitting there, you're thinking, you know what, I want to have a little snack on something, little glass of something, what you having?
Well, it depends. It depends on my mood. I do like a nice single malt whiskey, but I'll drink anything, mate. You know what I mean? Put it in front of me, and I'll have it. So I don't mind at all. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, I can't drink alcohol at the moment because I'm on medication that prevents it, because I'm at least about 30 years older than my age suggests, apparently. And I've been having problems with my knees and stuff lately, so I'm sort of like a hobbled old crone these days. You can't drink alcohol. I do like, for Christmas, I have to say, I do like a nibble on a mince pie.
Of course.
They're not particularly good for me because I'm diabetic, but when Christmas comes along, I do have a tendency to say, oh, fuck it. I'll just eat whatever I want, I can't really do the alcohol. I will, probably on New Year's Eve, I'll have, because it was a bit of a tradition between myself and my dad, and of course he's no longer with us, but I like to keep it up, and that is have a couple of mince pies and have a glass of port.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think I would probably do that again. As long as the medication can take it, I'll maybe have a little snifter of that. And what we used to do as well, so I'm like, this is going to sound very strange when I say it, but me and my dad used to enjoy a prawn ring. And what that is, you get it at Iceland, and it's just a ring of prawns and like a dip in the middle. And he'd take one and I'd take one, and we'd dip it in there. Like nice. Two old bastards sitting there eating our prawn ring.
Well, you know what? Iceland, they are good for their Christmas party food. They're good for that stuff.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And I haven't got one. I didn't really feel it was right, Tom, to walk into an Iceland with COVID going on and say, listen, guys, stop what you're doing. Direct me to the aisle with the prawn ring. I want to get that. So I haven't got a prawn ring this year, but I'll probably still enjoy myself with a mince pie and a glass of port. It'll be fine. Are you in much of a festive mood?
This year's been a bit of a rush, and that's the thing about Christmas. I always feel that a lot of it should be stripped back, and just the volume of gift given and things like that. I think it's more about, the food is a big aspect of it. I enjoy that a lot, and, a bit of a tipple. But I think it's those interactions because, God, I'm in my 40s now. What do I actually need off anyone? You know what I mean? And that's not to say I don't appreciate when people do get me things, but I really think, it should be stripped back, and because often you spend so much time getting ready for it that by the time it arrives, it's either a bit of an anticlimax or you're just so knackered. You know what? I forget we can swear on the Strange and Deadly show because on other podcasts we can't swear on it, but you're so fucked that you're just like, and you're like hundreds of pounds wears off, you're knackered, it's all done in a day, and I don't know. I just feel like the whole thing should be stripped back sometime. Fucking hell. It's like a podcast with Victor Meldrew on it, isn't it? Just moaning about shit.
Oh, there you go. Just a pin popped in the Christmas balloon by Mr. Tom Elliott. There you go. Look,
you started
it. We're in a strange situation in this country at the moment, where at time of recording, and hopefully one of our few listeners will listen back on this someday and think, oh wow, can you believe the world was in this state at one point? But it was. At time of recording, there's a new variant of COVID. We're not going to get into COVID on this really, but I think from the past that it's affected my life quite a bit, and I think it's affected a lot of people in various ways. But there's a new variant of COVID, and it's spreading quite rapidly. It's very transmissible, and so I think we're looking at about 10,000 cases a day in England at the moment. And so we're getting to that point where they're starting to say, okay, look, maybe don't get together with the family if you can possibly help it or whatever. So there's going to be a lot of people, I think, who choose to obey that advice. I don't think it's been made a rule, but certainly they're saying, look, we advise you that if you don't need to go and see Granny and Grandpa this year, maybe give it a skip to protect them, I think we're in a curious position, and I know for me, certainly the last Christmas and this Christmas have been tinged with a bit of sadness really, and it's hard for me to find that spirit like I could in the past. I kind of view Christmas for me personally as being more for the kids these days, and I don't have any kids, so there's nothing for me to be excited about. So I'm just going to pop my pin in the balloon as well. Jam, 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 jam. But look, guys, at the end of the day, I don't want anyone else to be unhappy at the same time. And I'm not saying that I'm sitting here unhappy. I'm just saying that, Christmas doesn't have that sparkle for me that it did in the past, just because of things that have happened within my life over the past couple of years. But I think for some people it absolutely will. I think if you've been affected by the pandemic and you have kids, maybe young kids, you want it to be exciting and vibrant for them, and I think you'll do the best that you can to make it so, even if you don't necessarily feel the spirit of it yourself, I think.
Yeah. Well, you know what? We're here, Chris. We're together. And last year we were quite lucky. We had a couple of people drop by. I don't think anyone's going to drop by this year. No one,
I hope not.
No one even knows we're still here, so it's highly unlikely. But at least we're here. Oh, well, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's probably the window cleaner just trying to get us money, as Christmas tip. But let's see who it is anyway. It's Danny Davis. Danny.
It's Danny Davis.
Gentlemen, can I come in? It's absolutely blooming parky out there right now.
Yeah, come in, boy. Come in.
Oh, man. Oh, it's so good to speak to you, man. How's it going?
It's going well. Starting to feel more festive with each passing day, so that's cool.
It certainly is. Do you want to have a sit down, have an aperitif?
Oh, yeah. Yes, please. Have you got some kind of lower tier sherry?
That's all we have.
Is that all you got? Oh, fantastic. I know I'm in the right
place. That's what we like. Yeah. Or a nice warm brandy.
Just put them both in a glass. That'll do me.
Okay. Mix them up. Well, Danny, it's lovely to see you.
Oh, it's lovely to be here. Thank you. I brought you a thing.
Oh, Danny, you shouldn't have.
Tis the season.
This happened last year.
Well, I've been admirers of you chaps for such a long time, and I feel churlish not to come with something for the festive season. So there you go. It's all wrapped up for you. So it's kind of mid-range.
Go on, Tom. You like unwrapping things.
Okay, all right.
I didn't mean it that way.
Oh, Dan, how did you know, mate? How did you know?
Well,
Thank you. Thank you
a
so
little
much.
birdie told me And also, I've been spying on you both for about 3 months.
Happy now. I thought there was something long and strange sticking out of that bush.
Yeah. Do you remember the noise round by the bins?
I do, yeah. I did suspect that it might be. So there was somebody with very long hair, and I thought this is either Danny Davis or a hobo.
Well, there's a point at which the two become one.
They do. They combine, don't they?
Yeah, they do. Over the summer months, I live outdoors.
Well, Tom, goodness me, what have you got there?
Well, it's a beautiful mid-range tablet. I've never heard of this brand before, but that's quite exciting.
Middle tier. It's not the poshest, not dirt cheap, just nicely in the middle there for you.
This is post Black Friday. You got this off Amazon, didn't you?
Amazon, and I might have saved up some cigarette packets as well.
Right, I see.
From the 80s.
Yeah. It's got that sort of look to it where if it wasn't for Amazon, you could have bought this at like the back of a pool hall or something, and I would have believed it.
I have actually been learning Turkish as well, so I'm sure I'll be able to to figure out how to get into
The beauty of it is that Netflix is the same in any language.
It really is. Yeah, we'll turn it on, Tom. Let's see what's on there.
Fire it up.
All right. Have you brought this for any particular reason, Danny? Is there something you want us to see on this?
I wanted to introduce you both, if an introduction it be, to the marvels of a limited series on the Netflix called Midnight Mass.
Okay.
That sounds like it's going to be up our street.
It's horror, so we're in good company here.
Yep.
It's a 7-part miniseries from the director Mike Flanagan. You might have heard of The Haunting of Hill House from a couple of years ago, and there was The Haunting of Bly Manor. So this is, I think it's his 3rd show for Netflix.
Right.
He's a bit of a wonderkind, isn't he?
Yeah.
I think quite celebrated at the moment.
Yeah. This, I believe he's a producer, but he's directed all of it. He has written the lion's share of it, if not written on every episode. Just a bit of a powerhouse at the moment. The beauty of this one is that it's one of his first original stories, because the other two, obviously Haunting of Hill House is a Shirley Jackson, and Bly Manor was Turn of the Screw. This is an original story. It's got more than and I mean this in the most positive sense, it's got more than a hint of Stephen King about it.
Okay.
So our kind of initial point of view character is a chap called Riley, who is a venture capitalist, who grew up on a secluded, quite isolated island, Crockett Island, and moved away to the big city, and got himself into all sorts of substance and alcohol problems, and finds himself convicted of committing a hit and run and killing somebody. And we follow him on his release from prison, returning to Crockett Island, which is a very isolated, very religious community, built around a Catholic church. And he's come back much changed. He's had to sort of face his issues with alcohol and substances, and he's kind of lost his faith along the way. And this community, it's kind of it's centered around this parish church, this Catholic church, and a new and very charismatic priest arrives on the island. And then strange things ensue, and I'm really reluctant to go any further than that. But suffice to say, like when I say it's a bit of a Stephen King story, this is in the mould of a small town into which something fantastical / untoward is introduced, and we get to see how this is sort of played out. I wouldn't say that it's necessarily anything radical in that sense, but it is superbly well acted, well written, and there's moments of drama that are really just a gut punch. Again, I don't want to spoil it because it's best to come to this as unprepared as possible.
Are there any actors in it that you feel we might know?
Hamish Linklater plays the priest. You might recognise him from Legion.
Okay, I didn't see that. Actually.
He's one of these faces. I think he does a lot of indie stuff as well. But he is absolutely astounding genuinely astounding. Kate Siegel is also present. She is Mike Flanagan's wife, and she's kind of one of the sort of Mike Flanagan repertory players, if you will. So, and there's Henry Thomas from E.T., all grown up. It's a really, really good ensemble cast. There's loads of stuff to kind of play on. The sheriff of the community is a Muslim, so there's a kind of tension there between his faith and the faith of the sort of parishioners. There's one particular character who's a real sort of a real out and out zealot, and you kind of get those sort of vibes. But she kind of goes to some real extremes as well. Again, I'm sort of being evasive about it because I really don't want to spoil it for people, but
sure.
There's stuff where it sort of touches on the nature of mortality. It touches on certain other kind of subjects, like I can't say that because that's a spoiler. Bereavement of a certain kind, shall we say?
Okay.
But it's just, I'm not painting it's like a barrel of laughs. It's just so well done and so well executed. It belongs in a particular genre, which again I can't say because it's a spoiler. And unfortunately, I'm hyper averse to this because somebody kind of accidentally spoiled this for me as well. And it's like it's knowing what the destination is not the same as the journey. But
I absolutely feel where you're coming from because I have watched some of this.
Yeah.
So I'm in the same boat. I wouldn't want to spoil it for anyone else. And thankfully I can cancel my Netflix now. That I assume this one is getting its direct debit paid from your account, Danny.
Absolutely.
So
what kind of guest would I be if I get you pay for your own Netflix?
Brilliant. I don't feel like I'm getting anything out of it, but that's fine.
You can watch it. You can watch it together. It's for both of you.
I would like that.
But that guy who plays the priest, I've never come across him before. I didn't watch Legion or anything like that. But he comes into it so low key, and then you think, okay, fine. But then he will just sort of floor you with a particular scene or something like that. You're absolutely right. It's the casting and the performances, which is pretty much probably all we can talk about without giving anything away. But they are pretty astounding.
It's like I again kind of like I've did a little bit of research before I came to you with this, of course. But there was a really telling quote from a review, I think it might have been Rolling Stone magazine, describing his performances, and it was something to the effect of sort of watching him perform the lines and sort of discover them at the same time. So it feels entirely natural in a way that is really, really rare, and incredibly charismatic, and just like really, really sells the notion of this person being so charismatic to kind of guide an entire community. With him again, curtailing spoilers.
Why, he sounds like the 2021 version of Scott Bakula. You remember him?
He's that's Scott Bakula. We can't compare him to Scott Bakula.
No one can compare to Scott Bakula. I mean, it sounds wonderful, I have to say.
It's I kind of thought about what might be a bit more kind of strange and deadly, but then I thought, what have I watched that was horror this year that really made an impact? And it was this.
Yeah, I mean, I know obviously on this show we tend to cover stuff that's a bit more trashy, but that's just because of the list that we're dealing with, the DPP list, the Section 3 list rather. But if it wasn't for that, this sort of thing, I mean, obviously I'm just going by what you guys are saying, it could easily fit within that realm. I mean, we enjoy sort of nerdy horror stuff as well, and so this sounds like it fits into that. I've always loved the idea of a kind of I suppose an isolated community and someone trying to fit into that and trying to solve some sort of issue among it, and this sounds very much up that street. What's the tone of it? Is there comedy in there? Is it played very straight?
It's played pretty straight. It's not without lighter touches every now and again, but generally it's played in earnest and not in it doesn't bash you over the head with it. It's just that's the nature of the story that's being told, I guess, and the tone really sort of fits it. It doesn't, it's really the tale well told, I think, is the old sort of chestnut there. It is just, it's like I said, it's not necessarily in and of itself innovative in the form, but it does kind of, again, I don't want to say what genre it falls into, but it does do a couple of really interesting things with that. So it is quietly innovative in its way, but it's not upfront. But it's basically you could probably take out a lot of the horror elements of it, and it would still work as a drama.
Okay.
And it's like I'm kind of sort of watching it and thinking back to. It's not really folk horror, and it's not really like M.R. James or anything like that. But there's sort of that thing with M.R. James where you set the scene, and you just allow people to live their lives, and slowly something encroaches on it.
Right.
Definitely.
And it sort of builds up to that, and it's just really it's like that. I mean, I was thinking folk horror just because it's sort of isolated community, but it's not. It's much more of a piece with that sort of classic Stephen King mode of malignant force in a small town, and it's just really, really well done. The cast is great. The writing, there's a lot of monologuing, but when it hits super hard. Part of this was kind of Mike Flanagan's, apparently it was his passion project. This is something he's been wanting to do for years. It touches a lot on some of his personal experiences, particularly around his issues with alcohol and his Catholic upbringing. So there's a lot of Mike Flanagan in it. It just sort of really felt like a story that he needed to tell. And it has a certain gravitas is such a cliche, but it kind of does have a weight to it.
So is it 7 episodes and that's it?
That's it.
It's a self-contained story.
Self-contained story. I mean, there's the usual clickbaity articles on the internet about what about season 2? It really doesn't need a season 2, and I'd be kind of upset if it did, frankly. Yeah, it ends on a particular note, and you could follow some of the threads that are left at the end, but I think it works best as a little piece in and of itself.
Sometimes it's all right not to, isn't it? You know, sometimes it's okay just to have something be what it's going to be. That sounds really good. I would look forward to seeing that. I mean, Tom, you've got the tablet there. We can sit down, have a little cuddle, and that's what we do at Christmas. We have a little cuddle.
Well, you've got to keep warm.
And look, he's a mountain of a man, really.
He is, isn't he?
And I'm like some sort of amorphous blob guy. So I mean, the two of us melting into each other's hearts is something that
each other.
We complement each other.
Yeah,
in a lot of ways. I mean, he could tear me in two, Danny, and he's threatened to do so.
Anyway, Danny.
I'm sorry, I've appeared to.
Fair enough.
No,
not at all. Not at all.
Before we let you out back into the cold, mate.
Oh yeah.
You are actually the composer of the music of the Strange and Deadly show.
I am.
And sometimes we credit you with that when we remember.
Oh, bless you.
But we never stop in our hearts thanking you for that. Can you remember when you wrote it?
Yeah.
Your inspiration for it, or give us a bit of background.
Okay, so the credible influences, obviously Fabio Frizzi and John Carpenter. The less credible influence, and this is sincere, Jamie and the Magic Torch. At least the beginning titles of it. So there's a bit at night if you go back on YouTube, and there's a lovely piano line there, and it was it sounds like I'm being kind of like, trying to be sort of funny about it, but it's genuinely a very spooky little piano interlude before it goes into the main titles of Jamie and the Magic Torch, which sounds like, sort of budget The Who. But yeah, so it's that, but it was definitely John Carpenter, Fabio Frizzi, but the Frizzi thing is like pulling on the old Gentleman's Grindhouse use of, because you used the theme from The Beyond for that.
Yeah.
Which is, and that soundtrack is just absolutely masterful.
Amazing.
But yeah, that, and I think some kind of DJ Shadow thing as well. But there's a version with drums and there's a version without drums, and I don't know which I like better. Sometimes it's the one without the drums, and then sometimes it's the one with the drums.
We use the one with the drums at the end.
That's a kind of a nicer sort of closing thing, isn't it? But like, yeah. But yeah, genuinely, it was a kind of the hitherto unforeseen Venn diagram of the Beyond, Halloween, and Jamie and the Magic Torch.
Wonderful.
Do you ever have regrets that such a beautiful piece ended up on this load of old toss?
Not for a second. Not for a second. Like music is a kind of like, it's a thing that I do, and I'm always surprised that anybody likes what comes out. So not for a second. It's got such a loving home, fills me with glee.
Danny, I mean, we've known each other now for a long time, and I'm so glad that you knocked on the door.
Yeah, well,
tonight.
I was in the area, and I thought, it's a time of year for not forging bridges, making bridges stronger. And it's been a long time coming, and it felt remiss if I didn't sort of pop in and bring you some cheap electronics and a bit of chat, and take some of your delightful sherry mixtures.
Look, take whatever you want. The more you can take, the less Tom can drink, and that can only be a good thing for me especially, I would think. But no, thank you so much for sharing. And
it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to be invited in now that I've kind of made myself look a little bit less like a vagrant. And,
the only reason you got in is because I hadn't set the turrets up yet, mate.
Yeah, well, you need to be quicker on that, mate.
I've got to be.
Slippery.
I'm trying to keep the undesirables out, but no,
I'm
glad.
You got one in here, mate. Sorry.
No, I'm glad. I'm glad it's you, and I'm really looking forward to watching Midnight Mass. It sounds up my street.
I'd love to hear what you think of it when you get to check it out. I do hope I haven't oversold it, but I thought it was very, very impactful and well worth your time.
Well, it's a pleasure, Danny, because you've been around for a long time. I met you around the same time that I met Tom, way back in 2007, 2008, somewhere around there. And our lives have changed so much, haven't they, in that time?
But we're all still in touch, and that's really lovely. That's kind of the thing. I was thinking about that period, and like the absolute best thing that came out of it was making friends. Genuinely, that's the thing I hold dearest about that period.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, guess how now,
Completely.
boy.
All right, I'm off. Sorry, I've expressed some platitudes now. I'll leave.
Thank you, Danny, for the tablet and everything. Come on, Tom,
right.
Let's sit down on the city and watch this together. And
It's cold out there, mate. Wrap up warm,
That's all right.
okay, and take care of yourself.
Cheers.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Stay safe, buddy.
Take care. See you soon.
Later.
Merry Christmas.
Bye. What a lovely fella, I've known Danny almost as long as you, but obviously we haven't spoke as much as you and I have. In fact, we haven't spoken at all until then when he popped around. What a lovely man,
Absolutely. I mean, you and I were I think you were one of the first people that I developed a proper sort of relationship with, if you like, on Twitter, back when Twitter was good. Back in what was it, 2007, 2008, whatever it was, and a very different environment it was back then. And Danny was around at that point as well, and people like Jim Moon, who knows where he is these days, but I say that he's more present and more relevant than he's ever been, really, in the podcasting world, Jim Moon. But just lovely to speak to him, and great guy, makes great artwork. He's just a wonderful dude.
I mean, I remember those days quite well because it was really good at the beginning. When you and I met, and people like Danny and Jim were around and stuff like that, and I remember going on Twitter, and like Clive Barker was on there, and I followed him, and he followed me back, and it was a time when you could have a Twitter conversation with Clive Barker, and he would do these like wonderful little tweets and stuff like that. He would use his words so eloquently, and he would say all these wonderful things in tweet form. Sadly, those days are all gone. Twitter is like a dumpster fire, but at least we got a friendship out of it, and we met people like Danny as well. But I mean, speaking of the likes of Clive Barker, we're in a bit of a strange time for horror at the moment, aren't we? With
strange and deadly time, almost.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of these franchises are coming back in very strange ways. I mean, we're getting a new Scream movie soon. Were you ever much of a fan of Scream, Chris?
I really liked the first one. Yeah, I thought the first one was really inventive, and it absolutely brought the slasher back for a certain period of time in the 90s. It brought the slasher back to prominence again and kind of made it very relatable. It was a very smart thing that Wes Craven did with that movie, I think. And I've watched all the sequels as well. I haven't seen the TV series, but I've seen all the sequels, and there's varying degrees of entertainment to be found. I still think the first one is probably the best one, but they made an iconic killer, didn't they, in Ghostface with that? For sure.
They did, yeah. I think I'm in a similar place with that. I mean, the sequels, you can watch them and they're fine for what they are. I remember not really thinking much of the fourth one, so I'm not sure that bodes well for the fifth one now, but it's sort of, at least there is a sequel, I suppose, because we're in this very strange space, aren't we, where, a lot of these franchises have been rebooted, but then they sort of discount the reboots and go back to the original series again. It's very, very odd, isn't it?
Yeah, I suppose they call it like a soft reboot.
Yeah.
And of course, we've seen it most prominently recently with Halloween, where Halloween has about three or four different timelines now within it. Where you have, so I was thinking about this earlier. I was trying to figure it out. So you have the original Halloween series, which is Halloween 1 to 6. Then you have Halloween H2O, which is basically Halloween 7. And Halloween H2O ignores everything other than the first two.
Yeah.
So Michael's still Laurie's brother and all but they ignore all the stuff with Thorne, and they ignore Jamie, I think was her name. Jamie, one of the big characters from 4 and 5. They ignore all that stuff.
Danielle Harris character.
Yeah. So they ignore all that stuff in H2O. So you have H2O, and then you have Halloween Resurrection, which is Halloween 8. Yeah. And then that's the end of that series. Then you have the Rob Zombie films, the 2 films that came in, which are basically, they're essentially remakes, reboots. They're kind of their own separate timeline. Then, more recently, they decided to make a new franchise, a new trilogy, as it turns out. It started with the 2018 film Halloween, which has Jamie Lee Curtis back as Laurie Strode. And now we're pretending that nothing else except the first movie exists. So now Laurie and Michael aren't siblings. Michael just happens to be a mad killer, and she happens to be the survivor of that particular night, but otherwise they're not related to each other in any way. So it's a really strange thing to do, because it's like, okay, so we really do have these different kind of converging timelines, and it's a really strange thing. They continued that with Halloween Kills, which came out earlier this year.
Yeah.
To, I think, a pretty mixed reception, really. I mean, I'm not here to review movies, but I can tell you, having seen the movie, I thought it was kind of mediocre for me personally. There's plot decisions with it. I know you haven't seen it, Tom, so I don't want to kind of spoil anything for you, but there are plot decisions that I find quite bizarre. There are things that I think are not done very well within it. It feels very much like the middle part of a trilogy, but unlike a good middle part of a trilogy like The Empire Strikes Back or something, you don't feel as if, I sort of feel as if, okay, you kind of messed it up here, and you need to, I hope you're building to something in the final installment that, allows this to end in a satisfying way, because this particular film I didn't think was that satisfying. So you have Halloween Kills, and then Halloween Ends, I think, comes next year, and that's kind of the end of this trilogy. Yeah. So I think they have to end it in a strong way. What I would say is the movie is the most brutal in terms of the kills that Michael Myers does. I don't know if I've seen anyone else say this online. I haven't really been looking that hard, but it's the most Jason Voorhees-esque that you've ever seen Michael Myers. He does some things in it that are like, okay, that's like a Jason Voorhees thing, Michael always had that kind of, that clinical kill. He was never sort of like, without saying who it is, there's a scene in this movie where Michael full on twists someone's head around, which is it's a very Jason Voorhees, and that character that he does that to, he brutalizes that character even before he does that. Like it's a total overkill type of thing. We've never really seen Michael Myers do that before, Yeah. So that's interesting in and of itself. But yes, there was another franchise that you brought up to me the other day, Tom, that has done this a couple of times, and that's a Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Yeah, and it's a bit more under the radar because I don't think it quite has the mainstream appeal of Halloween, but it's a very odd one as well, because we have the first movie, then there's Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, also by Tobe Hooper, there's Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3, and then was it Texas Chainsaw Massacre: The Next Generation or something came after that one. So there's those 4 movies that were made. Then that too had a complete remake. And I actually quite like that Marcus Nispel movie. You know,
it's good, yeah.
It was a bit of a different flavour, but it was quite good. And then there was a prequel, which wasn't really as good. But that's a thing in and of itself. But then, and my memory isn't as good with these as you know yours was with Halloween, but I think then they did the same thing. They said, okay, we're going to make a new Texas Chainsaw movie, but it's just a sequel to the first one. And then that movie got a prequel movie as well, which was supposed to be a prequel to the first Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So we have 3 timelines now, 2 of them jumping off from the first movie. But I read recently that there's going to be a new one on Netflix next year, which is again a sequel to the first movie, like completely starting afresh. So it's I think the difference is I didn't really like that new Halloween they made. I haven't seen Halloween Kills yet, but I was actually up for it. You know, I was thinking, great, Jamie Lee Curtis is back. Get rid of all that Thorn nonsense and everything. Get rid of Halloween Resurrection and all that. Why? Yeah, let's see what they do here. I was really up for it, but I think with Texas Chainsaw Massacre, that original has such a singular kind of vision to it, you know. And it was all right when they did the remake, because the remake is its own thing, and I think they did it quite well. But all these sort of continuations and prequels and things of that original movie that just don't have that flavor to them. They don't look the same. I just don't think they've really been able to capture that. So I think I just lost interest after a bit, you know, with Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And if you're going to do it, I think a complete remake route is probably the way to go, because all these, you know, I'm quite interested with it with Halloween, because I grew up with those, and it's interesting in its own way. But I think with Texas Chainsaw, you know, the quality just really isn't there, you know.
You look at the Hellraiser franchise, for example, that is about to be rebooted soon with I can't remember if it was like it's not going to be a theatrical movie, is it? I think it's going to be like a movie that's available for streaming, maybe, or...
I think so, yeah, I think so.
And it has a trans woman is actually playing lead Cenobite, aka Pinhead, and that I'm quite looking forward to that. You know, I think you and I both have an admiration for the Hellraiser series, even though it's taken us to some painful places over the years. But even that is, you know, that is going back to the original source material, in which the lead Cenobite, you know, Pinhead, was a woman.
That's right, yeah. You know, like you say, in The Hellbound Heart, there was a female lead Cenobite. So, you know, this is hearkening back to that. And I think it's the best way to do it, because we've had 2 Pinheads since Doug Bradley. One of them was really dreadful. And the next one, I understand he was better, but I haven't seen that movie. And for me to not bother watching a Hellraiser movie, that was a lot, because I was a bit of an apologist for that series for years, you know, because I loved the first 2 so much. 3 and 4, I can still get a bit of enjoyment out of them, and then from there on, it just, you know, I kind of watched them because I was wanting more from that series, but they're not very good. Let's face it, they're not very good.
No, and usually Doug Bradley would end up being like the best part of them.
That's it. Yeah. And he was barely in them. And so I think with that one, you know, going for something a bit different. And I've seen the comments online, they're being too woke. And it's not about that. It's like, first of all, they're going with what the source material says. And second of all, if you put another man in that role, they're just going to be compared to Doug Bradley.
Yeah.
Like everyone is. So why not try something different, which is what they've done. And I'm quite excited for it. I probably look, you know, that new Texas Chainsaw Massacre film, it would probably take a lot for me to even bother, you know, if I was just there, I had nothing else to watch. All right, I'll give it a watch. But I will actively seek this one out, and I'm quite looking forward to it.
I just want to sit here and eat a cocktail sausage with you, Tom. And have we got a prawn ring in, or?
Well, Chris, it's your lucky day. I went to Iceland before, and there you go. Merry Christmas.
Oh, Tom. Oh, I'd love to get my fingers on your ring, mate. But, oh, there's someone at the door. I'll have to wait for my prawns. I wonder who that is.
I'll put it in the fridge.
Okay, thank you. Do you reckon it's Danny again? Maybe he got lost, or...
Yeah, maybe he's come to get his tablet back. He's changed his mind.
He can have it back, mate, because it's a piece of crap, isn't it? I love the guy, but blimey, that was a cheap thing. All right, then, let's go and have a look at who it is.
Hello, folks.
Jim, how's it going?
It's Jim Moon,
It's going good.
the Moonmeister.
Welcome back, Jim. It's good to see you.
And you fellas, it's lovely to be back here, especially in the festive season too.
Good. Well, get yourself a drink, man. Get yourself a drink. There's plenty
Sit
there.
down. Yeah, have an aperitif, cocktail sausage.
Can't refuse that kind of offer.
Do people have cocktail sausages at Christmas that often? They don't really, do they? Maybe they do.
Depends on the office party, I think.
It does, yeah. Well, I'm just sort of stuck here with Tom, and we got some cocktail sausage and some mince pies and some cheese triangles.
Oh, lovely.
The triangles are more for me than him. Tom, you're mainly on the booze, aren't you, dear boy?
Mainly on the booze, yes, absolutely.
Mainly. What have you got there, Tom?
Yeah, I've got a nice glass of that 100-year-old bottle of port that you got me, Chris. You were so generous with that. I'm not sure you actually know. Remember when you left your bank card out and you couldn't find it for a little bit? Well, that's when I got that present off you. Thank you so much.
Well, thanks a lot, Tom. I haven't been able to pay my rent for a couple of months, and I now know why. Been stuck on the streets because of you bloody booze hound. But
Sorry
anyway,
about
let's
that.
not fight in front of Jim. Because, Jim, it's always a pleasure to see you. You're sort of like my Santa Claus in a lot of ways. I want to believe.
Well, the beard is getting white and the waistline is getting rounder.
It is, isn't it? But that's okay. There's quite a difference between the three of us, really. You've got Tom, chiselled, nice-looking, handsome. You've got you there, Jim, distinctive, maybe a little bit rotund, but that's okay. And you've got me, just a sort of jelly-like mass of energy in the corner. And I think the three of us together, it makes for a nice one. And you're our second guest of the evening. We had Danny Davis before you.
The great Danny Davis.
The great artist, the tortured artist himself, and he brought us a gift of a really rubbish Android tablet that had a Netflix series on it called Midnight Mass.
Oh, yes.
Yes, and we enjoyed hearing about that. And I understand that you've got something for us as well.
I have indeed. It is sort of fairly hot off the press. Certainly hot out of my bank account and overdraft. But it's a limited edition Blu-ray box set from those lovely people at Arrow Films. And it is the Yokai Monsters trilogy.
Okay.
It's actually 4 movies in the set, which I'll get to. But originally there was a trilogy of these movies done in the late 60s by the Dai Studio, who also made Gamera and Zatoichi, but also classics like Rashomon. This isn't like Rashomon. It's a little bit like Rashomon. But they're kind of... they're not like a trilogy as in part 1, part 2, part 3. They're more like a thematic trilogy of they're all dealing with the titular monsters who are kind of... Well, literally, yokai in Japanese means strange apparition. And Japanese folklore is full of these weird creatures that... they're kind of like the sort of spirits that inhabit everything. So you get some spirits that are kind of like your traditional bogeymen. But then you also get kind of, as you'll see in these movies, the spirit of an umbrella.
Oh.
An umbrella demon who hops around on one leg with a big slathery tongue.
Lovely.
And one eye.
It's my favourite kind of umbrella.
Exactly. Very friendly chap, in the first movie at least. But
A one-eyed hopping umbrella.
But they're all kind of period set stories set sort of 18th century Japan. And the first one's about a wicked magistrate who's hiring some thugs to turf out some villagers. And there's a masterless samurai on the scene who's wanting to put a stop to it. Kind of quite standard stuff, but you've also got the inclusion of this supernatural element. These weird monsters who get embroiled in this kind of a feudal drama. Very kind of like Kwaidan. And because Kwaidan was a few years earlier, I think that's kind of what they were going for.
Yeah.
However, because it's the shoe that gave us Gamera, it's a little, shall we say, a bit more low rent and a bit sillier, but still kind of has that sort of weird poetic creepiness to it. The second movie is actually all about, it's called Spook Warfare. It's a brilliant title. And that is about a falling out of an ancient Babylonian demon who's resurrected, who rocks up in Japan, and all the local spirits take offense, basically. And then the third one, again, is back to a more kind of like a traditional sort of samurai story, but again with this supernatural element in it. That's called Along with Ghosts. But the set also includes a reboot that was in the early 2000s, which is kind of a loose remake of Spook Warfare, the second movie. It was done by Takeshi Miike, who's a big fan of the original.
Master.
So that's just like a bonus they've thrown into this, and it's kind of wow. And wow. I've not actually got to that disc yet. I've only literally got my grubby paws on this big box set, and I'd always seen stills of the Umbrella Monster, usually in sort of old black and white horror magazines, and it never said where what film it was in. And when I saw they're releasing this, I've not really heard of that. I had a quick look on the website. Goes, that's an Umbrella bastard. Right, I'm having this. It's got to be worth the punt. I mean, previously, in fairness, I'd bought these like 3 Toho, alleged Dracula movies, the Blood trilogy, which Arrow brought out, and that was a stunning set. I had a ton of fun with them, and certainly this box set. I mean, it's £50, but it's 4 films for £50 plus a documentary and tons of extras. It's less than a tenner a film at the end of the day, and I've been enjoying it greatly. So we've still got the Miike one to do. I'm intrigued to see what he does, what his take on it is. But they're tremendously entertaining. The middle one is a bit lighter, and it's almost kind of like Kwaidan meets Monkey, the old TV series. It's very got a monkey energy to it, that kind of, not quite comedy, but quite, shall we say, a touch of slapstick to it, and lots of fighting. Whereas the other two, I think, have a really great atmosphere, and the contrast of the supernatural and the real world, which is, I think, is very pleasing. And the scenes with the actual monsters where they manifest, even though it's kind of, they're obviously puppets and people in makeup, but the way they do the lighting, and it just has something to it that's really sort of weird and dreamlike, very like Kwaidan, and but also just massively surreal, because the actual monsters are like nothing you've seen before. If you want to know where the inspiration for Henrietta in Evil Dead 2 comes from, that's one of the classic yokai monsters. A lady whose head literally comes off on a big long neck, and she strangles people with it.
Oh, great.
I also believe I've discovered the secret origin of the Teletubby. There's a big fat beast man with a big round belly, and when he rubs his belly, they can actually see pictures on it and use it like a crystal ball. I was watching going, fuck me. This is the secret origin of the Teletubbies.
Yeah.
Sounds a bit like me, to be honest.
Well, in fact, if you look at Ragdoll Productions, I mean, the actual yokai monsters, it is a bit like In the Night Garden, but with samurai, in a weird way.
Oh, wow.
Put that on when the nieces and the nephews come round. Keep them happy for a bit.
Is there a smiling sun baby in it?
Not quite, but there is a big giant floating head that grins a lot.
I like that, though. I like the sound of that. I mean, the thing is, Jim, what you think you've done is you've walked into a home, a warm home with 2 men, and discussed something. But what you've really done is walked into my heart.
Oh.
Because, as many people know, I'm a huge fan of Asian movies, and grew up on a lot of this sort of stuff. And I feel like I want to go on a I want to explore all of this, but I want Tom to be able to say something as well. So, Tom, what do you think of this?
I mean, I seen that box set come out, and I was just like, I have never heard of any of this before, But I think that's pretty great, because there's so many of these little culty kind of subcultures going on. Sometimes it might be Godzilla or something like that, or kaiju stuff, which is, pretty big, but still quite culty. And I think it's always fascinating to kind of get a glimpse into that world. I'm not sure whether I would go the whole hog and buy the box set, but I don't need to now because you brought it over, Jim. So thank you.
No problem.
Thanks for going into your overdraft there. But But yeah, so you have had it, Chris, because you obviously are a bit more prepared with this kind of stuff than me. But I am very interested to kind of hear about it. Absolutely.
Well, I know that you, Tom, you're quite into your kaiju movies, aren't you? Specifically, Godzilla. I know you're a fan of, and me, I didn't get into them as much until later on, and I'm not as au fait with them. For me, Jim, when you were talking about, the kind of Eastern mythologies and these monsters of folklore being part of the Edo era of Japan, I grew up with a big love of, obviously martial arts movies, but also the samurai. And for me, growing up on the works of Akira Kurosawa, for example, so I was a big fan of, growing up seeing Rashomon and the Seven Samurai. So I've always loved that side of it, and then the spookier stuff as well coming into it. When horror started to really kind of take off in a more grisly way in the 70s through to the 80s. There are companies like the Shaw Brothers who started moving on from martial arts movies to, some gorier stuff. And it's always interesting to see Japan take their own mythology and kind of play around with it and delve into it and explore it. You see, for example, the Jiangshi, which are the hopping vampires, for example, are quite prevalent in Chinese cinema in particular. The idea of these vampires that can only be stopped by placing a bit of parchment over their face that has a spell on it that can stop them from moving, So none of that really has anything to do with what you're saying particularly, but it just kind of got me thinking about the way in which Asian movies kind of explore their own mythologies and their own stories and their own ghost stories. And yeah, I saw, like you, Tom, I saw this box set and I thought, I don't know, is this I wasn't quite sure. Are these kaiju movies? I don't know if this is something that I would immediately buy, but everything you said there, Jim, is something that I really love. And you mentioned a film there that is one of my favourite films of all time, which is Kwaidan. And that is, Tom, if you don't know Kwaidan, it's quite a famous Japanese anthology movie where it tells a number of different stories throughout it, and it's beautifully shot and really evocative and interesting and quite ambitious for its time as well. When it came out, it's decades and decades old now. Hearing that kind of dreamlike quality explored in a film like this, and then also, Jim, you mentioned Monkey. I mean, I grew up on Monkey.
Monkey was my gateway drug to sort of Eastern cinema, really.
Yeah, I think, and probably for me as well. Do you remember Monkey Magic, Tom?
Yeah, now that is one thing that I do remember, absolutely. Just the right age for that.
Yeah, where a lot of the comedy, I mean, it was funny in and of itself anyway, but the dubbing was intentionally hilarious. It was English dubbing, really over the top, and it added to it. So this is something that I would absolutely be interested in getting, and I'm so pleased that Arrow is starting to do more of this kind of stuff. We kind of have three, I suppose, studios at the moment that are really catering to the Asian film fan. One of them is 88 Films. They're releasing a lot of Asian stuff, a lot of Shaw Brothers material. Then you have Eureka Entertainment, who are also doing the same thing. They're releasing a lot of kung fu movies, restoring a lot of Jackie Chan movies. And you have Arrow, who we're just around the corner from my dream box set, which is the Shaw Brothers Volume 1 collection, which they're about to release. And when I was a kid growing up, I remember a lot of these movies I was watching on, a crappy VHS tape. They looked terrible. They're all dubbed. So, of course, you never heard the original language, although the movies were dubbed anyway because nobody shot with sync sound back in those days. But it's remarkable to me, and so it gives me such a warm feeling to hear that these sorts of movies, some of them are very cult, to hear that they're being restored in this way. And from the sounds of it really sounds like Arrow has done a bang-up job with this box set. And it gives me, Arrow have had a few problems, I think, in the past couple of years, where they've had to recall some of their discs because they've got, maybe the soundtracks have been wrong or there's a technical glitch or something like that. I haven't heard of that happening recently, so I really hope they've turned a corner on that sort of thing, and they're really pleasing fans of this kind of stuff, and I count myself among them. And I have to say, Jim, this sounds right up my street.
I think you'll absolutely love it. I mean, last night we were Trees watching Spook Warfare again, and one of the lead yokai in that is a kappa, and she said, "Hang on, monkey, Sandy was a kappa, wasn't he?" I said, "Yeah, he was. He was."
Brilliant. It's so good that they, restoring this kind of stuff. Because I remember buying on DVD a box set of, Lone Wolf and Cub movies when I didn't really know what they were. And I tried watching them and they just looked dreadful. Absolutely dreadful. So I never bothered again, you know what I mean? And it was just like, I can't watch this. And it wasn't until we covered Shogun Assassin on the Strange and Deadly show that my interest was piqued again. So how great to have something like this that seems so obscure to a lot of people cleaned up and released like this. Wonderful.
Most definitely. I mean, I think I probably had the same DVD box set as you. I think it came out from... There's been a few over the years. There was one that was released from Anime Ego, I think they were called.
Right.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. And they released a full box set of the entire Lone Wolf and Cub series. And the prints were just really dark. At nighttime, you couldn't see what was going on. I remember thinking, wow, I mean, is this the best we're ever going to get? So to see these things... I mean, now, sitting up on my shelf, I've got the Criterion collection of the Lone Wolf and Cub movies, and they look amazing. And you think to yourself, gosh, when I was a kid, I never thought I would... I mean, Shogun Assassin came out on Vipco originally, and it was, and they
peer through the snow to see it.
Exactly, yeah. The whole Vipco thing was, look, this is uncut. You've never seen it this way before, but we're not going to do anything to restore it or do, we're going to do a pretty crappy job of it, but it is uncut. That was always there.
We pointed a camera at a TV showing the Betamax cassette we found in a skip.
But we've come a long way since then, haven't we?
Well, it is wonderful to see these movies, and what people don't realise is, old-fashioned film is, by its very nature, being a physical artefact, high definition, and these things, if you can get hold of the prints, damage can be, fixed. You don't have to put up with pan and scan and cropping and washed out third-generation sort of Xerox of sort of removed versions of movies. Thank you, Vipco.
Yeah.
From this set, I mean, they just look phenomenal, and so much part of the charm of them is the color and the lighting, because quite like a Kwaidan, it's all very unashamedly set on a big sound stage, so everything has that sort of technicolor sort of falseness to it, but that just creates this other world, a world of the movies. You don't realize it, but when you see a film that's made like that with absolutely no fucks given about realism. It's like, yeah, it's on a film set. You're making a film, dickhead. Of course it's not real. I'm not trying to fool you here. It's it takes you back. You usually get to that kind of feeling where, you're watching classic golden age cinema, the golden age of Hollywood, and there's something about that technicolor palette, which when it's used by a master, it can be so evocative. And I say there's some wonderful sequences in these movies that kind of, I'd say, actually on par with Kwaidan, even though the rest of the films they're probably a bit more second division, not quite as artsy as that, that classic, but they're definitely in that tradition. They'll give you what good cinemas should, which is they'll tell you stories and show you things you ain't going to see anywhere else.
And that's one of the great things about Asian cinema in general, is that there's so much originality in the stories that they tell. And it's so interesting, actually, in the HD age to be able to see, because some of the Shaw Brothers movies, when they're outside, they're clearly on a set. You can see, I think I've told you this before, Tom, that there's times where you can see, like, the sky, it's meant to be a blue sky, but you can see the corners of the sky. So you can tell that they're on a set, which they wouldn't have expected that back in the 70s, But it's a wonderful thing, I think, to see these kind of films being restored. And I've said it for years now that prior to some of these studios coming forward and giving these proper restorations, there's a company which is still going, actually, called Hong Kong Rescue. And Hong Kong Rescue, what they make essentially are bootlegs, but they're the best bootlegs you've ever seen in your life. what the guy does is he spends months and months and months and months restoring these movies, getting the best HD transfers that he can get, source a lot of Laserdisc content, for example, getting that transferred over, loads of extras, and you can buy them directly from him. And that was what I was doing for years and years. And some of them are still, there are things that he's worked on that we haven't had a great official release of yet, and you get them and you think, wow, okay, so it is possible to actually do a bang up job on this stuff. And the fact that companies like Arrow are coming forward, restoring some of the Shaw Brothers movies and everything, and something like this, I think it speaks to how we're starting to legitimize these movies. When I was a kid, kung fu movies were kind of viewed as, they're dubbed over, they're silly, let's laugh at them, and there is something laughable, there is something comical about some of those movies for sure, but I always felt that they deserved to be legitimized and seen for the art that they are. There's so much great choreography in those Shaw Brothers movies, for example, that is it's a work of art when you look at it, and a lot of people dismiss it as being, it's just chop socky silliness. Well, it isn't. There was a lot of artistry in the way those sequences were put together. So, this is right up my street. And I have to say, Jimmy, I don't know if you know this. I think I might have posted about it, but the last film that you brought us last year was, of course, The Woman in Black.
Oh yes.
And I ended up buying that for myself for Christmas and a copy for Tom as well. So we both benefited from that, and unfortunately I don't think I've got enough money to get us both a box set of Yokai, Tom, but
you're ruining the illusion here, Chris. Jim's just brought us one.
I've got to tell you like it is, guys. I'm broke. I might have to steal this box set away from you, but it's wonderful recommendations, Jim.
My pleasure. I say it is wonderful that these films are getting the treatment they deserve, because it's not just Japanese and Chinese films. It's also all the Italian and Spanish and French movies that traditionally, if it was foreign, it was badly dubbed. It was re-edited usually by some idiot, often with inserted scenes, pan and scan. And over the years, the number of movies that I originally saw back on the day, hide from some dodgy back of a chip shop sort of, video rental place, and thought, God, that was awful. And then later you hear people banging on about oh, it's a classic, really. But then when you see how it was meant to be seen, with all the scenes in the right order and in widescreen, and not through static and dirt on the film, you suddenly go, actually, these are really good films. It's and you begin to appreciate different territories have their own sort of styles of storytelling. I found in the West currently, in Hollywood, we're just so film school theory has ruined movies. Of if someone picks up this, it's got to be used in the next act to do that, and it's it's all so predictable. And what I love, throughout the lockdown the last couple of years, me and Teresa have been on a bit of an odyssey going around the world watching all kinds of, we've got tons of German krimis and lots of giallo and it's and lots of mad French and Spanish movies. But it's really fun when you're watching movies and you don't have that you can't set your watch by the next plot twist, and you have no idea where it's going to go. It's so refreshing, and it's marvelous that we live in an age where you can get your hands on this stuff.
Arrow, they're just about to release. They released Deep Red, Profondo Rosso in 4K, an actual proper 4K Ultra HD disc. They're just about to release Phenomena, which is another Argento movie in that way. So we're living in a world, and so many gialli as well that they've released over the years, Spanish ones, Italian ones, so we really are at, there's no excuse, I think, now for, we can't say that these movies are not being restored, and seen in the best possible way they can be. I think it's a wonderful thing. I think this is sort of why I don't understand why people moan about superhero movies so much, because I think to myself, well, there is a lot of variety out there. You don't have to rely on what's mainstream if you don't want to, or if you find that you're a bit tired of that sort of thing. Superhero movies and comic book movies are actually quite a small percentage of what's actually made in the world and what's released. If you're bored of the cinema, go on the odyssey that you're talking about, Jim, and look at some of these movies. There are so many great movies from throughout the years, and it's never been a better time to see them in the best possible quality, I think.
And so easy to get hold of. A lot of these things are very, very niche, but you can do that at your local high street shop and pick them up in the flesh. And online, it's a couple of clicks. You know, it's not like the old days where, you know, you relied on maybe you might meet a fan who'd once seen one who could tell you about it.
Absolutely. No, it's great, and this sounds wonderful, Jim.
Yeah, thank you so much for bringing it.
My pleasure.
Well, Jim, you know, we don't mean to kick you out into the cold, but, you know, I'm sure you've got some stuff going on in the great Library of Dreams. Christmas is always a busy time for you. Do you want to give us a bit of a rundown?
Well, yes, if you go to my site, hypnagoria.com, I've currently got a ghostly advent calendar going where every day, if you click on the door, you will get a genuine ghost story, allegedly true, of the ghosts that are abroad at Christmas time. Probably just about the time to go out, we'll release the Commentary Club Christmas special, which is the Muppets Christmas Carol. But if that's a bit sweet for you, we're also doing a commentary for the Dutch Killer Santa movie Sint.
Great.
And on my main show, I'm returning again to kind of alternative Christmas gift bringers and going to the Scandinavia and learning about the Tomten, who is basically a little sort of gnome who delivers presents, but has strange and sinister origins to do with barrows and mounds and all spooky things like that.
Jim, I mean this as a tremendous compliment, but you make me feel utterly useless as a person. Because you are just a productive powerhouse, and I said it on the last Christmas show, but it's always of a high quality and passionately delivered, and and I'm not doing anything, so it makes me feel horrible, but at the same time very pleased and proud of you.
Oh, thank you. The secret is I don't sleep well, so I have to find something to fill my time in the wee small hours.
Thank you so much for visiting us.
My absolute pleasure.
All right. Well, take care, Jim. We'll see you soon. Thanks for dropping by.
Indeed. Merry Christmas.
Bye, Jim. It's always nice to see old Jim, isn't it?
You know what? Yeah, I know it's only been 2 years, but it wouldn't be Christmas without Jim popping round and sharing a bit of wisdom with us. So it's always good to see him.
I hope he turns up every year, and I hope that he avoids the turrets that I've got set up to try and cut people down. Him and Danny have successfully managed to avoid that, I think, which can only bring good news. Last year, I think they may have got Andrew in the back of the bunts once he left the establishment. Maybe not. I hope not, because he's a good lad as well. But yes, it's always nice to hear from Jim. He's always got something interesting to say. He's always doing something, being productive, making me feel like a tit because I don't do anything. But I mean that in the nicest possible way. It was lovely to see him. And listen, guys, it's nice to not see you because you're nowhere to be found, are you? But hopefully you're listening. And look, I'm not under any pretenses that anybody listens to this anymore, but somebody will someday, I'm sure. And I hope that if you do, you have a very nice Christmas, or you had a very nice Christmas, or you have had a very nice Christmas, or will have a very nice Christmas. Whatever's going on with you, stay safe. Please stay safe. And hopefully someday I'll be able to record a message where we don't have to talk about COVID and we don't have to talk about the world being in such a difficult place. But listen, folks, it's not for me to lecture you, but I am going to lecture you. Obey the bloody rules. Get your vaccination. All right? Do your part in the world. Wear a mask if they tell you to wear a mask. Just do whatever you have to do, and hopefully someday we can see the world in a better place again. That would be nice. And Tom, look, it's been lovely, dear boy. Your Christmas present's coming tomorrow morning, so you better be ready for that.
Oh, I am.
Yeah, don't open it till
I won't.
Christmas Day, and don't be disappointed with it because you know what I'm like. I always do the best for you. And,
you do.
But no, you've been a lot of people won't know because, of course, we haven't recorded an episode for a while, but you've been a paragon of friendship and support this year, and I thank you for that. It's always lovely to record with you, and as I say, Tom and I still do stuff on his Patreon, so go sling him some bloody money, eh? Get off your arse and why don't you do something, eh? Why don't you do something? We give all this away for free. Get on there, drop him a couple of pennies. You can listen to Tom and I on the Night Gallery show. Now, I have to say that it's a lot it's watered down, and I don't mean that in a disparaging way, but I have to be on my best behaviour on that show.
Yes,
because,
you do. Yes, you do.
Yeah, I have to be on my best behaviour because there's a few people on there that'll get me. If I say God, anything to do with God, they're going to be coming down on me like a ton of bricks, guys. I'm doing my best, so I have to rein it in on there. But it is still fun to listen to us on there, and we have every intention, really, of trying to bring this back when we can to finish this list.
Yeah, I know this has been a bit of a sort of meandery, not particularly focused on anything much kind of podcast, but I think that was the point. We just needed to kind of get back here on the Strange and Deadly show and get something out, and then hopefully we're not going to build a massive amount of momentum, but it's just a little push towards us getting those last 2 episodes out and getting the list done.
Merry Christmas, everybody, and a very happy New Year from myself, Chris Clayton.
And me, Tom Elliott.
I remembered that bit, Tom. That bit where we introduce our own names.
We do the thing.
It's great. Yeah. All right, everybody. Go and watch Get Back on Disney+. It's a 2.5 hour movies directed and compiled and put together by Peter Jackson. It's bloody great. I haven't had a place to tell anyone about it on a podcast, and even though this is horror related, I don't know, just imagine that like Ringo sticks a knife in someone's eye. He doesn't. Instead, he sits there like a calm and polite man while everyone else writes songs better than he could. But that is an objectively, I think, great series. Get Back on Disney+, and we'll see you on the next one in 2022.
See you then.